Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Quarantine Random Talks. This is Nap O Leon, and it's been a while since I made a video, but anyways, by all means, here we are, so let's get started. Quarantine Random Talks, Episode 2, White Supremacy. And yes, I know that this is a very sensitive and a very Herculean subject, but yes, let's get right into it, shall we? So, before anything else, I'd like to share with you a poem. This poem was written by an African boy at around age 10. Nobody's actually, I'm sure, who wrote this one, but this is a short poem, but with a long list of awards. It's an award-winning poem, and it is very impactful on a global scale. So the title of this one is And You Calling Me Colored? And it goes like this. When I born, I black. When I grow up, I black. When I go in sun, I black. When I scared, I black. When I sick, I black. And when I die, I still black. And you white people, when you born, you pink. When you grow up, you white. When you go in sun, you red. When you cold, you blue. When you scared, you yellow. When you sick, you green. And when you die, you gray. And you calling me colored? So that's basically it. That's the whole poem. It is a very short poem with a long list of awards, and it isn't award winning for nothing. It actually says something. It's a very good eye opener. Setting aside the grammar, because it was written by a kid, it's actually a very good poem and somehow related to today's topic or subject. Now, today's subject is white supremacy, and this is a very huge topic. So let's narrow it down, shall we? So it's hard to discuss it in an objective and neutral way. More so, it's hard to discuss this without talking about racism itself. But let's just narrow it down. Okay, narrow it down to what is white supremacy and how it came into existence. What do they do? And what is its impact on the world? Basically, just an overview as to what is white supremacy, like a descriptive approach, like, oh, I saw something and I just describe it like that. So it's basically limited to what we know, what I know, basically describing it. So going to the question, what is white supremacy? White supremacy is the belief that the white race is the superior race and all other races are inferior to it. It is the belief that the white race is in danger of being extinct because they are being overpowered and outnumbered by other races or immigrants. Hence, they felt the need to do something. They felt the need that they should take action in order that this will not happen, and they must reestablish their dominance to maintain and defend a system of power, wealth, and privilege. It's as simple as that. How it took place and how it came into existence and how it is being implemented differs in every country, but the idea is the same, that the white race is superior and that all other races are inferior or below it. In most cases, if not all, it is being implemented or it came into existence through colonization. White supremacy relies on scientific racism or pseudoscientific arguments. So they present scientific arguments from prominent authors that state that the white race is superior over all races. In some accounts, it is also presented that God chose the white race to be superior and they are destined to be great. Some authors call this the manifest destiny. Now, how did it came into existence? White supremacy came into existence mainly because of colonization. How it came into existence and how it was implemented varies in every country. We have the US, South Africa and its apartheid system, and in most African countries. Also have Australia and in so many parts of the world, even in Asia. So prominently, the US was founded on white supremacy. White supremacy existed before and after the Civil War. Even the leaders back in the day, they believed in white supremacy. Leaders like Roosevelt. It started with the white colonists or the European settlers who went to the New World, or what is the Americas. Now, there was anxiety anxiety on the part of the European colonists, that because they are outnumbered by the Native Americans, and they have this thought that since they are outnumbered, there are more Native Americans than those of the colonists or European settlers. They had this thought that since they are outnumbered, if these Native Americans will unite, there will sure be a revolution and then a genocide. So the white people, let's just call them white people for easy reference, okay? White people, black people, Jews, okay? So the white people, they have this anxiety that there will be a genocide, that the white race will be eliminated because they are outnumbered. So in simpler terms, the whites would be, yeah, in that sense, they had the fear that they would be overpowered or eliminated. Then there was a shortage of manpower, so the white landowners employed African slaves. So this is where the African slaves came into the picture. And there were more African slaves than white landowners and servants. So what happened here is that there are so many Native Americans, but they've already dealt with that. And then there came the African slaves, and there were more than African slaves. It is of equal number or more. They were of equal number or more than that of the white people. So there's this fear or anxiety by the white people. The white people were basically outnumbered, and they feared that when the Native Americans or the African slaves unite, they would be eliminated. Hence, they established their supremacy. What they first did is that they first did this to the Native Americans, then to the African slaves, and then eventually to the Mexicans when they took over the Mexican territory in the west side of the Union, of what is today United States. So they treated the Native Americans and African slaves harshly, continued to oppress them, even creating laws that would empower white people and oppress those who are not white. They would go on asserting their supremacy through race science or scientific racism, wherein they cite prominent works from authors that states that they are the supreme race above all races. As well as manifest destiny, as what I've already mentioned. Manifest destiny is the belief that that God destined white people to take over lands and to establish supremacy. So the white people, even those who are white servants, were given wealth, power, and privilege, while those who were not continued to be oppressed. Although the manner of establishing white supremacy differs in every country, it's much like of the same idea or the same reason as to how it came into existence. European or white colonists took over and established white powers, and a long line of history and so on. So it may, how it is being established and implemented may differ in every country, but it's kind of like the same idea. Invaders or colonists came in and took over the land and established their supremacy. That's as far as it goes, and as simplest as it could go. So notably, the United States, South Africa, the apartheid system in South Africa and most African countries, also in Australia, and how they dealt with the Aboriginal tribes, much like the same idea. You get the idea. Okay, now on to the next question. What do they do? Pretty much as what I've already mentioned. The scientific racism or race science, and then there's also manifest destiny. Forced labor and slavery were rampant for the non-whites. They made laws that favor the whites and oppressed the non-whites. Examples of these laws are the non-whites were not given rights of citizenship and suffrage. So there were laws that granted citizenship and the right to vote only to white citizens or white people. Those who were non-white, they were not granted citizenship, and they were not given the right of suffrage. They were not allowed to have their own businesses, and that the African slaves will remain slaves. So there were laws that there were provisions of the law that state that African slaves will remain slaves, even their children will remain slaves. Regardless of who the father is, they will still remain slaves. So it does happen. It does happen that slave owners rape the slaves, and the children of those slaves are still slaves because of the law. Yes, that happens. That happens. They also emphasize that white women should be protected from the non-whites. So there are so many cases of killings and tortures just because a black man was looking at a white woman, or he allegedly catcalled or harassed a woman. One notable case is the case of Ep2, wherein he was murdered for allegedly whistling at a white woman. This is just one of so many cases of killings, torture, and terrorism for the sake of white supremacy. Now, the thing about white supremacy is that they envisioned an all-white nation free from immigrants. And apparently it was because of those immigrants or those African slaves that they become a country. But anyways, it is this fear that they will be overpowered by immigrants or non-whites that made it exist even up to this day. They want to send out or eliminate those immigrants or non-whites. There have been groups of white supremacists that resort to non-violent movements to assert their cause. There are also groups that resort to violent and terroristic acts. One notable group is the Ku Klux Klan, which existed at around the late 1860s. Now, this group employs violent and terroristic acts to show white supremacy. They see African Americans as well as Jews and other immigrants as their enemy. So basically, they look like this. Yeah, it's the best picture that I could find, okay? So they look like this. They look familiar, right? Yeah. Other notable groups are the IKA, or the Imperial Clans of America, the White Power Skinheads, and so many others. Speaking of White Power Skinheads, yes, they are literally skinheads, like this. They have this kind of haircut, and they are white. And they are mostly found wearing leather jackets or any kind of that apparel. So basically, they look like this. So grabbing my leather jacket, and this is my only white shirt, by the way. So a skinhead, a white skinhead, and then most of them are on a leather jacket. So they basically look like this. Except that I'm not white. And I'm not Caucasian. But I am Asian. Filipinos are Asian, don't be stupid. Anyway, the white supremacists of today come in groups, and they engage in active protests that sometimes become violent. You've heard that in the news. It's all in the news. I don't even have to say a thing. There are groups that employ non-violent means to assert their cause, while there are also groups who would resort to violent means. Yes, like what most of those groups do, like the Ku Klux Klan. They resort to terrorism, murder, arson, and they have this the burning cross, which is they gather around the burning cross, which is their symbol. Yeah. So impact to the world. So how did it impact today, or most of our lives today? School will always teach us, or have always taught us, that all of us are equal. There is no superior or inferior race. One author even said that there is no white race, black race, or any other races, because there's only one race, the human race. However, white supremacy has really made a huge impact on a global scale, which is still prevalent even to this day. Even here in the Philippines, if you are white, you are beautiful, or if you are white, it means you are rich, or you are from a prominent family. That's what it is here, and as what I can say, maybe for also most of the countries in the world, maybe it's also like that. Although I cannot completely understand why, but that's the way the world is. That's the way globalization works, and we are basically living in a world that has been influenced by the good things and the bad things of the past, wherein some bad things are still prevalent. This kind of reminded me of my classmate before back in college, we have this activity wherein we are to interact with foreigners, and then he shared that whenever he's talking to a foreigner, or yeah, a foreigner or a white or any other foreigner, he feels infuriated, and I don't understand why, but it's also the case for most people. They feel infuriated by foreigners or maybe some other whites or some other races. I don't know. It's something that I don't completely understand, even as I have read something about this topic. But anyway, that's it. There are things that you don't completely understand, but you know what? Just continue to be the best. I mean, do the best you could, and actually, that's all there is for it for today. And I'll end this by citing one of the lyrics from Black Sabbath, their song "Into the Void," wherein the last verse states that leave the world to Satan and his slaves, leave the world, leave them to their future in their grave. Make a world where there's love to stay, peace and happiness in every way. And that's all for today. And as always, thank you for watching. And just as every good viewer or every good audience does, click like, subscribe, and follow it. Thank you very much, and have a good time. Keep safe.